This is Evan Talks podcast, where we talk and share our mental health journey every other Monday. Our goal is to break the stigma of mental health and to help people along the way. Subscribe and be a part of this awesome new journey. Hello and welcome to this week's episode of Evan Talks. And this week I am very lucky to have a guest with me, and I'm going to be talking to Mark, who's going to be sharing a bit about his story with depression and anxiety and talking us through what his experiences have been and what his coping mechanisms are and all of that sort of really important stuff that we want to start sharing with people. So I want to start by saying thank you, Mark, for joining us and being so willing to share your story.
Hi, Evan. Yeah, no, that's nice. It's nice to join you, and it's nice to talk about these things.
Great. So I guess just to give the people a bit of insight as to who you are, do you want to tell us a little bit about you, your background, and a little bit about your depression that you've had?
Yeah, sure. So as you said, my name's Mark. Bit of background, I work in the hospitality industry now. I work for a staffing company, and I recruit staff to work at various events around the country. Prior to that, I spent quite a few years working in IT, but realised that computers bored me and I enjoyed being around people. The flip side of that is that I've always suffered from low self-esteem, anxiety, and a real kind of lack of confidence in my own abilities. So certainly working in hospitality, I had to push myself on a daily basis to kind of get past these anxieties and these shortfalls in my personality, if you want to kind of put it like that. So yeah, so I've always kind of had issues with self-esteem, issues with confidence, but certainly in the last, like I say, with 3 years, they've really kind of come to the fore and started to become quite dangerous to my life. At certain points, very dangerous. But I'm kind of the other side of that now, and I'm learning to kind of cope with it and move on with my life.
So prior to the last 3 years, did you realize, other than your self-esteem issues, which I can 100% relate to in my own experiences, but your anxiety and depression, did you realize in those years before the last 3 years where it all came to a head, did you realize what you were going through, or was it just kind of, oh, I'm having a bad day and that's it?
Yeah, I think it was. I mean, if you speak to any of my friends, I've always been moody. I've always kind of been somebody that was either kind of the life and soul of the party or the complete opposite, not wanting to talk to people, didn't want to be around people. So I've always kind of been that up and down.
Yeah.
And so I think it as depression occasionally, but never. There was never any kind of suicidal thoughts there. It was more just, I'm having a bad day, people are going to have to deal with it type thing. And I used to get quite annoyed when people wouldn't accept me if I was having a bad day. It was kind of if I always had to be this kind of bright, happy person. And I kind of struggled with that. But I never really considered it to be depression, just that I was a bit moody occasionally.
Okay. And then, so what do you want to share with us? What happened to kind of bring the depression to light and to make you realize that it was actually depression?
Yeah, no, certainly. So I moved into hospitality and probably about 8 or 9 years ago, and certainly towards the beginning of me kind of realizing that I was suffering from depression, I'd get a lot of issues where I was really struggling when it came to live events. So you all kind of know what I mean by live events. So setup days I was fine. But when it came to an actual event where there would be hundreds of thousands of people there, I would have real issues with that. And I'd start to really have issues with not wanting to be there and trying to avoid doing that job, which when you're kind of self-invoicing and you're not on PAYE, if you don't work, you don't get paid. So exactly, it became a real issue. I mean, there'd be days where I could literally not get myself out of bed. And then it would be just making excuses as to why I couldn't go to work. Because I didn't want to say it. I just can't get out of bed because it sounded ridiculous then. It doesn't sound ridiculous now. But I used kind of multitude of excuses to not be at certain things because I just couldn't handle the anxiety and the pressure of being in front of that many people and dealing with that many people and dealing with any conflicts that happened during that time.
Yeah.
So I kind of really struggled with it. So I kind of got myself out of the front line, so to speak, and I kind of went to work at one site. And
Yeah.
I went in as an assistant manager or an operations manager, but within a few months, I was kind of the GM had left, and I was kind of running things. So I was doing two jobs effectively, and the
Yeah.
pressure started to build and build and build on me. And you suddenly realise that I was responsible for this kind of whole organisation, and it was taking its toll on my health. And there were days where I just couldn't drag myself out of bed for it.
Mm. And then I suppose that was kind of the straw on the camel's back, or straw that broke the camel's back, was it?
Yeah, it was. I was kind of still trying to. It was at that point, I would say, kind of in a 6-month period. I kind of call them the voices, but it's that where you start to really say to yourself, "I'm worthless. I'm nobody will care about me if I wasn't here. The world's
Right.
not going to miss me if I'm gone." And so there would be times I remember standing at our local train station, trying to go into work in the mornings, thinking about, well, if the next fast train comes through, 2 steps and it'll all be over. And it's hard to say that now,
Yeah.
because I've never had those type of thoughts before. And thankfully, there was always also the voice in the head that says, no, look, there's lots of people that know you, lots of people that love you, lots of people that care about you.
Yeah.
And it was that voice that kind of was strong enough. I think if I hadn't kind of got to a point where I realised what was going on, I think the negative voice would have taken over, and I probably wouldn't be sitting here talking to you now.
Sure. Yeah. It's a very real feeling, and I think for people that don't experience those voices, because most people probably don't, but for those people that do experience those voices, they'll understand how loud and how convincing they can be. Whereas for somebody that hasn't had those voices before, it's very hard to comprehend. Like those voices that tell you you're not good enough, the voices that tell you nobody will miss you if you're gone. I mean, I've made good friends with these voices now, so I get to tell them to shut up. But it is difficult, isn't it? Because they're not just voices that you can push away and you can forget about. I mean, when they are saying, 2 more steps and then you won't have to worry about this stuff anymore, that's a very, very hard thing to say, but it's even harder to keep hearing in your head every time you're on a train platform. Did you ever get to the point where you avoided the trains and you went to another means of transport?
I went for a point where I would get the kind of overground train, but then I wouldn't go to any of the tube network. I would kind of I would get a bus or I would walk to the office, because I then started just getting to a point where I didn't like being around crowds.
The anxiety side of things.
Used to really kind of, my breathing would get erratic and I would just kind of get really fearful of being around crowds and being in amongst people and quite conscious of people being near me. So, it kind of manifested itself in different ways.
Okay. So thinking back to that time, what would you say that the triggers were? Was there any one trigger? Was it purely the amount of pressure from work, or was it just...
Yeah, I think it was a combination of, I used to work in IT and I used to run help desks for financial banks. So I know what pressure is, and I know how to deal with that pressure. It was a different type of pressure. It was kind of, I was doing for 2 people's jobs. I was also going through the struggle of, I'm not good enough to be doing one person's job, let alone 2 people's job. So you've got that constant battle in your head with the voices. And there wasn't one trigger point. I think it was a combination of a lot of things. Years of kind of not having any belief in myself as a person, not having any belief in whether I was any good at anything. And then suddenly being thrust into a position where I was in quite a high role, and I was doing 2 people's jobs, and as I said, I didn't think I was good at either of them.
So that would be enough to kind of break anybody, never mind somebody that's got some form of depression and anxiety.
Yeah.
So was it then that you sought medical help, or how did you deal with that?
No, so at the time, my colleague who had been the general manager where I was working had moved over to another location, and she was amazing. She I think she could see that I was struggling, so she was the one person that I kind of turned to straight away. And I said, look, I think something's wrong here. I'm not. And she kind of kept saying, it sounds like you're suffering from anxiety, suffering from depression. You need to kind of get help about this. And I went to the doctors initially, and they said, oh, yeah, well, it sounds like this is what's happening to you. We'll give you this number. You need to phone this number, and they will phone you up and they'll assess you. And then they'll let you know whether they can put you into touch with a therapist or whether they'll kind of give you CBT stuff to do. So I did that initially, and I kind of took a bit of pressure off because I'd made that initial step.
Yeah.
But then nothing happened for weeks. And then eventually kind of got a phone call and had a phone interview and kind of went through, like, on a scale of 1 to 10, how you feeling? On a scale of 1 to 10, would you commit suicide, etc.
Yeah.
And I thought, well, I'm going to get something out of this now. But again, nothing happened. And this is no disrespect to the National Health Service, the doctors, they're all trying, but I understand how stretched and certainly limited when it comes to mental health issues they are. So I kind of just went and carried on what I was doing. I had this colleague who was amazing during the whole of it. And she was probably one of the people that just kept me going, when if she hadn't been there, I probably would have quit or just done something even stupider.
Yeah.
And then at the same time, I'm a huge music fan, and a lead singer of a band that I really loved went missing, and he'd been suffering from depression for years. And he'd written about it quite a bit, and I'd always, unbeknownst to me, I'd always related to those songs, and it wasn't until later on that I realised why I related so much to his songs. He went missing. He sent some tweets saying that people needed to be good to each other. He hadn't been that person. And then 2 days later, they found his body floating in the Forth River.
Oh, sure.
And so I was kind of like, it stunned me because I loved his band, loved his music. And it then made me realise why I loved his music, because of the words he spoke. I understood all those words. And then I started reading. As I do with things, I get obsessed by things. So I just read all the kind of obituaries about him and read all the interviews about him after he had passed away, after they found his body. And reading them, it suddenly made me realise that if you just change the person's name, all of his friends were talking about me. They were saying the exact same things that I know any one of my friends would have said about me.
Sure, that's powerful, eh?
Yeah, it was like it was like a bolt out of the blue. It kind of suddenly everything became focused, and suddenly I realised what was kind of going on to me, and what had been going on to me for many years, not just over the past few years. And it was then kind of I woke up one morning. I literally, a couple of days after kind of realising all this, I woke up and I literally couldn't get out of bed. I was just rigid. I struggled to move. I was in tears. And I just kind of thought, you can't go on like this. This is getting ridiculous. Mm. So I made a phone call to the doctor, went to the doctor's, like an emergency appointment, and I sat in the doctor just crying my eyes out, and kind of walked in to see the doctor again, crying my eyes out. And he was like, yeah, okay, right, we're signing you off work. You need to start speaking to somebody. Do you want to go on to medication straight away? Which I didn't at that time. And that kind of got the ball rolling. That kind of suddenly just took a weight off my shoulders initially. But then I kind of realised that I needed to then go home and tell my wife everything that had been happening. Because like a lot of men, we don't talk about these things. No. So she was unaware of any of this that had been going on. She just thought I was a bit grumpy occasionally, but she was blissfully unaware because I'd hidden it so kind of well. So yeah, then had that conversation, which was very, very difficult, as you can imagine.
Yeah, I actually can't imagine, because I've never been married, so I wouldn't know even. I mean, I've had relationships that haven't lasted because of my depression. So yeah, I mean, that must have been difficult to have that conversation. How long have you been married, if you don't mind me asking?
We've been married 21 years last year.
Sure. So, and this was this about 3 years ago?
It was coming up to about it'll be about 2 years this year.
2 years, yeah.
Yeah, it'll be about 2
So
years.
you've gone a good 19 years, and your wife's
Yeah.
not known this. Yeah.
So, yeah, this was all leading up to my 50th birthday.
Oh,
So
sure.
yeah, kind of. So it was a tough conversation, and just to see her face kind of go through a multitude of emotions in a short space of time
Mm.
was something that will kind of stay with me for as long as I live. There was kind of anger, there was upset, there was hate, there was not understanding it. It just went through everything, and I had no real answers as to why I was feeling this way, but I just knew what the problem was now. But it was really it was tough. It was probably, I felt, easier telling the doctor and easier telling the person at work than I did telling my wife.
Oh, I can understand that. Yeah, absolutely.
Yeah.
So since that, you've obviously, so like I've admitted to you, I've done a bit of stalking on Facebook, and just I've read your blogs, which you sent me the link to, which I'm going to put the link in the description of the podcast, so hopefully people can go and have a read. That's a big part of your life. Obviously, music is a big part of your life, and you're writing about music in your blogs. So, is that a form of therapy for yourself? Do you see that as therapy?
Yeah, 100%, 100%. When I kind of I started to see a therapist. In the end, I paid to go and see a therapist because I needed to talk to somebody that didn't know me. I needed to get all this out of me.
Yeah.
And one of the things that we picked up when we were talking was I'd started to do a mood diary. I was just kind of writing down how I felt at different times.
Mood diaries, they're the way forward. Yeah.
Yeah. And I really enjoyed doing it, but then I really enjoyed just just writing again. I hadn't written for years. I hadn't probably written stuff since I was at school.
Yeah.
So it was just nice to be writing again. And it kind of she kind of said, well, look, just write what's ever in your head sometimes. Just write how you feel about things. It doesn't have to be in the diary. It can just be anything.
Mm.
So I just kind of started to write things down, and then kind of got the confidence up. I showed some pieces that I'd written to a few people, and they said, look, that's really good. You write with your heart, which kind of a lot of people don't do.
Yeah.
You should try and get it published somewhere. So kind of through various circumstances, kind of got stuff published up on a couple of blogs. And I love writing. I find it, I don't do it all the time. And then but suddenly something will hit me, and then I'll just sit and write and write and write. But yeah, it's definitely, I find it easier to explain in a written word than I do verbally. I get tongue-tied still. And I get anxious when I'm trying to say things sometimes. So I find it so much easier to write it all down.
Well, you're doing well so far. So there we go. And are you writing a novel? Did I see that on your Facebook?
Yeah. So I've always there's that famous quote, like, everybody's got a novel in them. And I've always kind of remembered that. And I started an idea quite a few years ago, over 20 years ago, about writing something, and had a kind of an idea, which is still there, but it's changed because I've started to write about things I understand and things I know.
Okay.
So yeah, I'm kind of halfway through it at the moment. I've been doing a lot of research, and it's a novel, and it's not about me, but a lot of the things that are in it I can relate to and I can talk about from the heart and be very honest and open about. So although it's not biographical, there's a lot of me in it.
Okay. And that's obviously helping you as well. It's something else to focus on. And
definitely, yeah. For me, the trouble I have sometimes is I get fixated on something, and then I try to do too many things at once.
Right.
So I want to write, but then I want to do this. Somebody offered if I want to do a radio show on internet radio. So I want to do that, and I need sometimes just to kind of pick the project that I'm going to do and just concentrate on that. I tend to find my mind sometimes wants to do too many things because they're such great things to do that I want to do them, but I can't do them all at the same time. And it's kind of, again, training myself and a bit of self-therapy, kind of just put them into compartments and looking at the ones that I know I can do straight away and the ones I can go back to at a later point.
Yeah. And then that could in turn be a negative because you put that pressure on yourself to do
Yeah,
things. Yeah.
no, exactly, and yeah, and that's again, I've kind of realised that over the last few months that that's where I start to put pressure on myself.
Mm.
When I do things like that, so I'm sticking to just writing at the moment, and the other things will still be there once I finish this bit of writing. So I kind of start to look at it that way now.
Perfect. Good. So, is there anything else in terms of like your relationships and things with your with people you spend your time with? Is there anything else that helps manage your moods and your triggers, do you think?
Well, I'm on medication, which has really helped
Right.
because my moods are either like crashingly high or crashingly low. So I'm
Mm.
now kind of a bit more on the level. I still have anxiety attacks, but
Yeah.
I recognise them coming on now, and I know how to deal with them now. So I've kind of been reading about meditation and breathing exercises. So I started to do breathing exercises, and I realise if I focus on one thing, then the
Mm.
anxiety eventually goes away.
Yes. Yeah.
So yeah, music's been a great therapy for me because I started going to concerts again. But then I've had an instance the last couple of weeks where there's been two concerts I was going to go to, but I had anxiety attacks over it because I knew I'd be meeting up with lots of people that I knew, and it caused me to be anxious. So I didn't go to either of the gigs because I just got myself into such a state about it.
Yeah.
So it's for me, I kind of always think it's going to be there. It's just how I manage it and how I recognise it. Um, but yeah, I've got a lot of friends out there now through music and that I've had for a long time who have been amazing and all kind of fully understand what I'm going through and are all kind of very supportive and are the type of people that say, look, if you're having a bad day, just say it, don't worry about it. There'll be other gigs, there'll be other nights out. They're so receptive to how I feel, and it makes so much of a difference because it just takes that social pressure off of me. I don't have to worry
Absolutely.
about anymore.
I was going to ask you how do they feel when you have to bail on them, but it sounds like they're amazing friends to have if they
Yeah,
can just accept that you're not up for it. It's interesting. I'm meeting up with a friend this weekend and we're going to go out for a big night out, and I ended up speaking to him this afternoon and just saying, I know you wanted to go out, I know you wanted to have a big night, but can we just do something low key? And because he knows me so
yeah.
well, he just goes, yeah, Evan, let's just stay and let's watch a movie. Let's just so it makes so much of a difference when you can be honest with people like that. It doesn't it?
No, totally. Because I never used to be. It
Yes,
would
yeah,
always
yeah.
be excuses, and now I've still got the same set of friends, and they've all been so supportive. But now it's a case of I just tell them, I said, look, I'm not feeling up to it,
That's good.
and they understand. Whereas before it would be excuses as to why I couldn't go out, and that doesn't help. That just makes the whole matter worse. The fact that I can be honest and open with these people, and the fact they've all stuck by me is amazing. And I was fully expecting to lose some friends over it, and so far, touch wood, I haven't. Not the friends that I want to keep anyway.
Yeah, that's amazing. Friends can be such a great help, but then also if they don't understand, can make it so
Yeah,
much worse.
I think a few of them probably still don't fully understand, but they're
Yeah.
accepting of it because it
Okay.
is such a widely talked about thing these days, especially amongst men, especially amongst men of kind of a certain age.
Mm.
It's still it's the biggest killer of men in this country between certain age groups.
Yeah.
So I think the more people talk about it, I'm not expecting people to understand. If they've not been through it, they're not going to understand, but they can empathise and they accept you for who you are. It's the people that have been through it that will understand you and will kind of give you a lot more leeway sometimes.
Yeah, absolutely. So it sounds like you're being a lot more open and honest about the depression and the anxiety now. Have you experienced any sort of negativity when you've opened up about it, or has it been mostly positive?
No, it's been mostly positive. I've not had any negativity. The person I thought I would get negativity from would be my mum, but
Mm.
I just went around and told her one day. And my mum has always been the type of glasses half empty type person, and
Oh,
we have such a good relationship now. I went around and told her everything that's happening. It's actually brought us closer than we have been for a long time.
oh, that's amazing.
and she was really supportive of it, because initially it was like, well, is there anything I've done in the years? Is there anything how I brought you up? And it wasn't. But it's kind of, she's fully understood, and she went through a phase initially of like phoning me nearly every day, like, "You all right? You okay?" And I'll be like, "Yeah, I'm fine." And then she's now kind of got out of that phase because she realizes she doesn't have to do that. That I'll phone her if I'm not feeling great, or I'll phone her if I want to have a chat. But initially there was that kind of very motherly, like, every day, "Are you okay? Just let me know anything." And it would be that, towards the end, it's like, "You don't need to keep on phoning me. I'll be fine, honestly, but I appreciate it."
That's amazing that she's been so accepting. And
Yeah.
if you don't mind me asking, how's your relationship with wife been since?
Yeah, it's certainly, we're a lot stronger than we have been for a long time. I think it's brought us closer. I don't think she doesn't fully understand it, or it's one of those things. It's, as I said, if you've not been through it, I mean, she will have bad days, but not to the level that I have bad days. But that's not saying that her bad days aren't as important as mine. They are.
Yes.
So it is. I think, again, it's like any relationship. It's working through it, and kind of, I need to be open and honest with her. So if I wake up in the morning and I'm feeling like I don't want to do anything today, I need to tell her straight away. And I do, and it's made things a lot easier between us. We probably don't talk about it as much, but if I'm feeling low, then we do talk about it. But then she does know that I've got a circle of friends that I can turn to that have been through it and understand it, and that won't, not judge me is the wrong word, but won't kind of look at me in any different way.
Okay, so I guess the key thing and the main point of my podcast is to really encourage people to open up and talk about their depression, if it's to themselves or to their families, or at least go and seek help if they need to get professional help. What would your advice be to somebody who is going through something and doesn't feel confident in talking about it? How did you start talking about it?
But by going to the doctors and kind of getting somebody that didn't know you to turn around and say to you, "You need help, you need to look after yourself," that kind of opened the floodgates. And then once you'd kind of told somebody, it felt much easier to talk to other people. It's not an easy thing. It's certainly to people that know you. So that's why initially I kind of went to see a therapist, and I had a really good relationship with her, in terms of, she just sat there and just let me talk, and would point out a few things, and would kind of say, "Well, look, maybe it's this that started that." So I would say, if you can, go and see a doctor, get what help you can. But if you don't want to talk to somebody that's close to you, there's so many different groups out there on social media that are doing the right thing and that are so positive when it comes to mental illness. Just whether you're into a band or whether you're into whatever, there are so many good positive uses of social media these days that discuss mental illness, that will offer help, will offer you advice, will offer you guidance. So whether that is a Facebook group of a band you like, or whether it's somebody like Mind or Calm or some of the other mental health charities, they're worth talking to, because they have the answers for you, and they're not going to look at you differently. They're not going to treat you as if you've got a disease. They're going to treat you like you're a human being that just needs some help.
Yeah, and that's exactly it, really. I mean, I'm going to put in the links to those places you mentioned, so that people can go and find them if they need to. But social media, as much as it's a bad thing for people with mental health problems, it can be also such a good thing if you change the sort of things you're looking for. So on Instagram, if you start following hashtags mental health awareness and things like that, your newsfeed will become a whole lot more positive, rather than just seeing all your friends or all these celebrities out there living their best lives and taking photos.
No, exactly.
And there are groups on Facebook. So there are ways to get help without actually having to physically talk to people. So that's a great bit of advice for people. So thank you, Mark.
I mean, some of the best friends I have at the moment are people that I've met on a Facebook community, and they're the guys that I go to gigs with now, and I would trust them with anything these days, because they've been incredible to me. And some of them I've not even met, but we've spoken to so much over the internet that they understand me and I understand where they're coming from. So social media can be used for so many good positives that you just need to push yourself sometimes.
Yeah, absolutely, absolutely. And I guess that leads nicely onto the challenge for this week, because I'm starting doing challenges every episode. So this will be challenge number 5, I believe. So this week's challenge is change your feed. So start following hashtags mental health awareness, hashtag self-preservation day, those sorts of things. So change your newsfeed. So just add in some different people or things to follow. I mean, you can always follow Evan Talks, just putting that out there. But yeah, just change your newsfeed, because that way while you are doing your hours of scrolling that we do, and let it be good or bad, we will now start to see some positive things around mental health awareness. So change your newsfeed. That's my challenge for this week. What do you think, Mark? Decent challenge?
Definitely. Yeah, no, definitely. Yeah, I've noticed difference. I've done it with my news feeds, and yeah, it makes such a difference. It really does, and it puts a positive spin on your life.
Absolutely. And there's some great tips that are just literally in like 30-second clips, or in a little picture that you can take and use throughout your day. So yeah, great. Mark, thank you very much for sharing. This has been, I've found it very enjoyable. It's been you doing most of the talking, so thank you for that, because I think people get sick of my voice. Yeah, I just want to encourage anyone else who wants to share just to reach out and get in touch, and hopefully Mark will be an advocate for saying that this isn't a scary experience, and it's been quite pleasant.
No, definitely. No, it's not a scary experience at all. I quite enjoy talking about my depression and my mental health, so it's worth doing, definitely.
Great stuff. Thank you very much, Mark. And thank you, everyone, for listening. That's been another episode of Evan Talks. And we'll be back in 2 weeks' time. Thanks very much. Thank you for listening to Evan Talks. And if you haven't already, please subscribe and share it with your friends and family. All the links to the topics are on the socials. And if you want to talk and share, please get in touch. Be kind to yourself and each other until the next time.